What's up, everyone? It's good to be back on the channel, live show. Just a chill night, talk about whatever you want on this road to 10K subscribers. We are pretty close, so wanted to come out and also chat with a few of you guys, make sure that you're doing well. Lots of sports going on. Not quite sure if that's the kind of sports you want to watch. I was watching some college football today, watched some English Premier League earlier today as well. So, yeah, I just want to chat a little bit. Also, watch some cricket, which, if I'm being honest with you, not particularly something that I really want to talk about, but I will probably talk a little bit about it. It hasn't been good for West Indies, but we'll talk about some of that stuff. But again, this is just an opportunity for us to hang out, chat, kind of chill vibe, nothing too serious. Anything that's on your mind, we'll certainly get them on the screen. I see some people rolling in. So yeah, it's a hodgepodge of chat this evening. We have a few new videos on the channel too. So appreciate you guys checking that out. We also launched membership this week too. So the locker room, it's right there for you. Exclusive content, exclusive merchandise on discount, and a number of other stuff that we can probably get involved with this evening. Hopefully, you guys are doing well, and wherever you are in the world, we'll be happy to chat some more. A couple things. Let's start with the West Indies, because we have to talk a little bit about cricket. I've been a huge West Indies fan ever since I was a kid. When I used to live in Jamaica before I moved and all that stuff, and I always watch. And it's this kind of sad state of affairs. Every now and then, again, I pop up with a video or two. We talk to some people, we interview different people, and we kind of try to take stock of where it is. And it's just shockingly not good, right? Lost those 2 test matches in India, comprehensively beaten. In a sense, you would have taken them pushing it into a day 5 test match. Nobody saw that coming. Hope, Campbell getting a century there, both of them pushing things out under not the greatest bowling lineup that was on display. There was no Alzari Joseph in that series, no Shamar Joseph in that series. So you didn't anticipate that the bowling lineup would have been as good as what we saw in the Caribbean earlier this summer with Australia, which by all indications, that was a bowling lineup you could live with, right? You would say with the Jaden Seals, Joseph, the 2 Josephs, you interchange a few players there, and then you would not be upset. Took 20 wickets. It's an important figure. The batting atrocious. And nothing changed between Australia and England and India, rather. And it's shocking. Did we expect to go there and win? No, but the fight wasn't there except for I would say the last part of the first innings of the second test match, and then obviously after the follow on, a big resilient batting from those guys. Anyway, it's over. Didn't get a chance for us to kind of unpack that. Don't know what we'll do for Test cricket. It's something that I've been thinking a lot about. I mentioned there's never shortcuts to high performance. Can't do much to get to the top if you don't have the right things in place. But there's some things that need to be fixed, and that's something, if you're into cricket or into seeing West Indies cricket thrive, I'd love to talk about. I have a few things lined up in terms of talking to other people about this and their kind of sense of where the rest of the world is, and hopefully maybe after 4, 5, 6 interviews, we'll come up with a bigger explainer video that will kind of unpack some stuff. But it's hard to watch. I still watch. It's a struggle fest. I will admit that I wasn't staying up late during that period because I was like, why am I doing that? So in many ways, I would get up a little bit earlier, watch some of it, then do the highlights package that Willow TV had really good stuff on. And we moved to quickly because before that, you saw what happened when they did that series where they lost the T20. Don't even want to go back over that kind of shambolic series loss there. And then that was a test series. Now we get to ODI series against Bangladesh. And this is the one area of the sport in the last I don't know, last year or so, that started to show a little bit of an improvement. Nothing that will scare anybody, but you thought that you would get something there. Utterly outplayed again today from Bangladesh. Bowl them out for, chasing rather at what, 207, so 208 was the target. And you thought that at one point, and I mean, we could put a scorecard up if we have it. If we don't have it, it's all good. You thought at one point that the team was going to make these runs, right? That is what I thought. I looked at it. I was struggling to find a stream for it because it wasn't showing on all the platforms I subscribe to. But Brandon King and Athlos were there, 44, 27. And you figured, okay, this might be a run score that you can chase down. Who thought that? I was like, what? Then wickets start to fly. You lost Casey Carty. After those guys, you lost those guys. And at some point, Sheho comes in and he's trying to play this role of structuring himself and hanging around. And hopefully he would, be the anchor there. But Richard Aseme just totally ran through. 5 for him, 6 wickets, I think, in the end for him. And it's a devastating performance. Once it started to turn, to spin in some interesting ways, there's nothing the West Indies could do. And even when wickets were falling, the runway was in a position where you felt comfortable that they would be able to just withstand that, soak up some pressure, try to restructure some innings, but nothing. You're losing Rutherford for a duck, 6 for Chase, 3 for Gudakesh Moti, Justin Graves, 12, 1 for Shepherd, 7 for Peer. It's just, I don't know what to think. Is it they just move from one format to the next? And I mean, I know it's a different team. Some of those guys from the Test team were there, but the adjustment, nothing. It's utterly embarrassing, if I'm being honest with you. I don't know how to process this one. And it's just everywhere when it comes to West Indies cricket, you can't get any joy. You can't get any joy. They're not giving you anything to feel comfortable about. And the golf, in terms of, especially when you play the bigger nations, so obviously you're going to play a Bangladesh. You used to think you're on that level, but you're not on that level sometimes. And you start to think about, you play Australia, you're definitely going to lose. You're going to lose to India. It's getting to that point where a lot of people are talking about the two-tier stuff. And I don't necessarily like it if we go back to the Test cricket. And I'm rambling, but, it's just it's a vibes night. And so what you do, right? I just don't really know. I'm not supportive of that. I think the teams that are not at the elite level of the spectrum, when you think about Australia or South Africa won the World Test Championships, and sometimes they don't feel like they want to play a lot of Test cricket either. But the top teams, India, I get it. You want to play lower level cricket or wherever you are more often than others to just kind of develop a game, be much more competitive. And this is why one of the ideas I've been toying around with, and I don't know how they'll do it. And I think Cricket West Indies have to get involved in trying to figure out innovative ways to make sure they play more cricket, right? Especially Test cricket, because the Ashes is about to start. Everybody's going to watch that. It's going to be competitive. And it's going to be 5 tests. India plays England. It's the same. So there's a number of countries that will play a ton load of games, right? And the lesser nations, they aren't able to do it because they just don't have the finances to really and truly run the sport. And if it's like a chicken and an egg thing, when you're terrible, no one will show up in the stands, and you're not getting that kind of support, and you can't put on series. Also, if you're uncompetitive. And I think that because sometimes Test cricket won't sell in some markets, especially if you're not good, there need to be a way in which, like, your Sri Lankas, your Pakistan, because they're also in a little bit of a free fall. Bangladesh, So even South Africa, even though they're that good and sometimes they don't play enough cricket, you need these mini tournaments. I think, you remember we used to have those bilateral, trilateral series or so on. Maybe you set up a thing where everybody gets a 5 test, but it's not the same team, right? So you could come to the Caribbean in the months where the weather is good, and you get 3 teams coming. It's kind of a mini test tournament going on there. So there's some kind of a competitive structure. So maybe you play 2 against one nation, or you move around, and you could crown somebody the winners after. You do the same in other parts, and you start to build a game where you get more cricket, and hopefully teams will get better, and maybe because if you start winning against other nations, you'll get more cricket. I think the fact that West Indies won in Brisbane, when was it, last year or the year before now? That's how they ended up with 3 test matches in the Caribbean. Otherwise, Australia wouldn't have done it, right? So if you start beating England and you beat them properly, or you win, if it's a 2 series and it's drawn, they'll start extending because the competitive nature of the cricket improves. And when your first class cricket isn't good enough, it's not competitive enough, you also need a workaround with that. But even when you get into the test level, if you play 5 test matches over a 2-year period, hypothetically, as a player, assuming you get in and out of the team, and then there's somebody else that's playing like 3 times the amount, you just can't be competitive, even if you have similar talent. And I go back to all the discussions, and to this day, no one can prove this otherwise. When you take the level of the cricket at the under 19 level, and you just parse out the talent, you will look across the board, and you will see variation, but it's not wide enough in terms of the golfer class and the talent. It's what happens when you take an under 19 cricketer and try to develop them into a top class cricketer, right? That age group of, by the time they're 21, that's when you start looking at them differently, right? And you see there's a gulf, because one now starts to play a lot more cricket, much more competitive environment, in addition to different high performance protocols in terms of technique study and condition readiness. Those things are important, and that's where the West Indies cricketer doesn't have it, and some other nation states as well. But so you got to figure out ways in which you can get around that. So it's a shocking display today. I don't want to even break it down. I have to be honest with you. By the time it was 8 down, I basically stopped watching. I had it playing still, but I was not paying attention because I was just watching soccer at that time. Because, like, why am I punishing myself in that way? And I feel like we're part of a small group of people who continue to watch the cricket when it's not competitive. It's just really bad. Anyway, hopefully you guys are doing well. Let me know where you're coming from. I know there's a few people on the live, not a lot. Let me know if anything you want to talk about. I mean, because you don't want me to just riff all night. I won't stay long, but I'll think about it. I'll switch through different sports. So just because that's how I'm the kind of mood I'm in tonight. So I want to move to in a second. I'll probably turn a little bit to some soccer, association football. Watch some Premier League today. Some interesting news coming out there too, and different stuff that we can probably talk about as well. Set piece merchants are again on top of the league, uh, which is I don't want to make a problem for Arsenal, but Arsenal are back on top of the league today. I watched them in the late afternoon game today, and they do what teams that want to win titles do. I'm not sure if they'll win the title, but you have to find ways to win. It's not the kind of beautiful Wenger football of years past, but they find a way. Trossard there puts Fulham out of it, and they win. But I think the big news of the day would have been the firing of Ange Postecoglou, sacked by Nottingham Forest after only 39 days in charge, right? By the records, I think that's the second shortest Premier League manager in history, right? Samuel Allardyce was at Leeds for 30 days in 2023, but Postecoglou here in 2025, 39 days out, which is the Nottingham Forest stuff is shocking in general. I'm not a Forest fan or anything, but if you follow it, they are the ownership group. They had issues before with the previous manager. They sacked Nuno rather, and they got Ange in. Ange gives you Ange ball. I don't know what that is. It's it's kind of a open football season for him. Tries to attack a lot, but leaves a lot of space, and oftentimes gets punished. And he was, I guess, lucky to be in a job again, in the sense that what he I mean, he did win a European title against my club last year, or last season in the Europa League, but it didn't last, right? And he comes to Forest, and they got eliminated from the Caribou Cup, and then it's just no good luck, no wins here in the Premier League, which is not good. It's not good for Forest. It's not good for any team. I don't necessarily think you can survive off that. And they had to make a call. In many ways, I wonder why they didn't fire him over the international break that just happened, right? They should have done that. Maybe you would have gotten a new manager in and start the bounce, but perhaps they didn't want to do that, particularly because many players are away on international duty. That's not what you're doing. But he's gone, and are we shocked? Not really. I don't think, especially when you start going down, it's a team that's not at the same level as Spurs in terms of the talent pool. You didn't anticipate that he's gonna turn things around. And yeah, we'll see. Right now, there's different things in terms of who will replace him. I think Daesh is probably the front runner. I think I saw something earlier today that he's probably the talks have been held. People are talking about Mancini too. I'm not sure if that's going to happen, but it might be Sean Dyche, who comes in to try to turn around the fortunes of Nottingham Forest, which historically was always a great club, big club back in the day. If you if you know your history, but they've seen some interesting times here and there. So yeah. I don't know if any fans of Forest are on the line, but it's interesting, and it leads me into a longer discussion about potentially where sackings could go. I could talk about my club. It's no surprise I support Manchester United. Probably been doing that since 1994, I think 95 there, and Ruben Amorim, he's under pressure as well in terms of, I mean, there's never a moment where a Manchester United manager is not under pressure, at least in the post-Fergie era. Even Fergie was under pressure. Nothing would happen there because he was a serial winner once he started to win. But it's the intensity of a club. It's a big club. The eyeballs, if the toilet paper is rolled up incorrectly at Old Trafford, it's headline story. So you're gonna get that. And Amorim has been in the job. He's getting close on to a year now. Comes in, talked about the pain that the club has to suffer to change. Didn't necessarily want to come this early, but he did. Took the job. And I'm not quite sure if he's turning around the club the way it should. I'll admit it's an oil tanker. I've used those kind of language. It's hard to move and change the fortunes of a club that quickly. He got some backing, and if many of you saw my podcast, I did a podcast with the United Boys. It's on the channel. You can check that out. Little bit more detail. We did it maybe a week ago or so, and we finally put it out last week, I think. And kind of more in depth on Manchester United, if that's your particular flavor. But when you look at it and you try to assess the language around it, there is backing from Sir Jim So Ratcliffe is in charge, Ineos Group, they're in charge of all football operations, potentially everything around Manchester United now. Glazers have virtually taken a back seat in any kind of decision making. Obviously they have to run things by them. And the key thing to think about Ratcliffe's kind of a talk when he did that interview with the Times in England was you got to give him time. You got to give him 3 years is a good measure. But at the same time, you can't necessarily believe those things coming out of his mouth, right? Tomorrow against Liverpool at Anfield is always a tough match, no matter how good United is. Even in the heyday, it's a tough place to go. If he goes there tomorrow and he gets totally destroyed, it's not out of the question that he could be fired, right? It's maybe not on the back of that, but if the results continue to go sideways, and when you kind of look at what's happening at Manchester United, it's just not what he wants. The structure is just not it's not happening the way I think it should be. And in many ways, my issue with Amarin, and this is just my take, maybe a lot of people might not necessarily agree with this, but here's what I think. No matter what type of coach you are, what kind of system you want, and we can talk systems, and I think the system thing is people buy into the system culture and they talk too much about whether it's the right system and so on. The key thing about great managers too, or influential managers, or any managers, the ability, if you're a coach of a team, is to improve the players, is for them to buy into what you're doing, to understand, to adapt. We're talking about the very best kind of a elite level of players. They understand systems. They might be more comfortable in some systems, but the intelligence level of a top footballer is such that they should be able to adapt in some interesting ways, right? Some things take more time than others. And if you're working and patterns of play and all of that, it would take a much longer time. But he did have a preseason. And so you look at it and it's just not good enough. And they won against Chelsea, but it's 10 men and they struggle and they won the last match, gave him a little bit of a respite, right? But come tomorrow, it could be an annihilation, and then it could be again, and it's just a media circus around it. Amarin talks about him appreciating rather the support from Sir Jim, but you have to think he's under immense pressure. And I go back to the relationship between, and I think this is an Ineos thing too as well, between what they are seeing for the club and the kind of support that they're giving. And the overall, because it's not like you can go out and just buy 15 million players at once or just buy 10 players in a cycle. It doesn't work that way. It's cost prohibitive stuff too, because United is in an interesting kind of a debt issue. But what did he want? And what's important to our team? And he didn't get it, right? So the goalkeeper thing is the biggest challenge for me. You knew this in the spring. You knew this, that you probably didn't want that goalkeeper. And it took after the season start to get a goalkeeper. And is this the keeper you want? He looked good. I like Lemons. He was commanding. The things that I liked about him was he was barking at the back four. He was trying to create a presence, right? The Stretford paddock, Stretford end rather was singing if he's a Peter Schmeichel, right? So that's interesting, right? You like that. But you don't know, right? And even if he was going to be a number one choice, why not get him in before the start of the season? So your goalkeeper is important. Needs to work with the four, back three, whatever, back five when it's defending, however you want to structure the team. So that's problematic. Next thing is in the middle of the park. You're going to play two in midfield all the time, and you didn't kind of bolster that section with a motor, right? You didn't get an energetic player, or a player that can just take the ball on a turn and control and distribute. You don't have that. But you go out and you buy some attacking players up front in Cunha and Buemo, which makes sense, but maybe you buy one and figure out something in the middle, right? Then you got another striker, which is another young striker. I get it, but there's holes in the team that maybe you should have fixed in a different way in the recruitment. And I'm not saying that's the manager alone, I'm sure, or the coach in the States, because Amarin is a head coach. If whatever he wants, but the purchasing is not straightforward either. And I think that's a massive challenge for me. I don't like how they did it. And I think they left him out to dry in many respects. And that is something that for as a big club and for all they're trying to turn around, they have not necessarily figured out. I think that's something that they have to work on. And they've done interesting work. They've revamped the Carrington. It's a much better place. They're talking about sports science. They're trying to fire a lot of people, make the club leaner. Whatever efficiency models that they're doing is probably something that you get from your run-of-the-mill consulting company, you name it, from McKinsey or whoever does streamlining your workforce and so on. Those are okay stuff. I don't know, it might be problematic, but when you're taking away the food from the dinner lady, or you're just operating the club in a different way and the results aren't necessarily coming on the field, you have a problem, a big problem, a massive problem. And I'm not sure if this guy can turn it around. Is he a bad coach? No, right? Because there's so many top class coaches that have come and not have the fortune that they had at previous places. So that means there's a massive problem with the club. We've talked about it, the structure's there, and what can you do to fix it, right? I think they're trying to do it, but it's a bit slow, right? So we'll see. Yeah. So I'll start talking about that. I'll probably talk some track and field. I see Dean the Dream here has a question. And so it says, thoughts on Athlos, good for track and field. Should Diamond League and World Athletics make the sport more accessible to viewers? Okay. Yeah, Athlos is good for track and field. I think anytime athletes can get in a situation where they're gonna earn something that was good prize money, $60,000 to win, you can't complain. You have to like it. It's interesting. It's the end of season meet this year. Obviously, next year they're hoping to launch their team-based models, and wherever Alex Sahaney is, let's get on the channel and talk about it. I try to reach out to them, but they haven't responded. But so the short answer is yes, a little bit more nuance on it. Track and field as a sport has a lot of room to grow in different forms of competitive models, right? There's a lot of room to grow. You can come up with all manner of things in different parts of the world, and it wouldn't necessarily create any kind of a problem. So that's a good thing. There's growth potential for different competitive models at the professional level, at the very top of the sport. There's no question about it. And it's a matter of about how athletes adapt to that, where they go. And there's enough athletes around at the elite level for them to be competitive. You may not get everybody like you get at a world championships or Olympics, but you just don't do that. You don't get that, right? In every sport, the talent is dispersed, right? And there's multiple leagues in soccer. There's multiple leagues in basketball, even around the world. Obviously, everything concentrates at the highest level in the NBA or so, but you can do things in interesting ways, right? Different leagues forming in the United States. I just saw. I was in. I don't want to talk about this, but I was earlier this week. I was meeting with some very high level stakeholders and that run sport at a very big level in terms of, say, NFL, in terms of motor racing, and also some politicians. And you saw some space of how cities try to attract sport and the public-private partnership. I do a little bit of stuff on that from a different side of things, and so I was in some interesting spaces, and you saw this banana league popping up and everywhere, women's volleyball moving in the United States and so on. So back to the question you're asking, because I'm rambling. Sorry about that. Is that yes, it's good. It doesn't matter to me what happens in terms of how the product is offered. In generally, I have a two couple caveats here. One, the competition has to still stay within the framework of what we consider elite level, right? So what we want to see that is under a World Athletics banner, it has to stay in that lane. But the production of it clearly doesn't need to be in that lane, right? So the pole vault can happen in the mall, right? As we've seen before. We can have things in different places. You think about the Ryan Krauser thing last year when they created a kind of different version on the shot put where you just try to reach levels and not necessarily mark on the distance, but they have the distance in it. I can deal with that kind of stuff, right? You get high performance still. Because what you're trying to do if you want to grow this sport is to get eyes on the sport. And I'm not talking about the people who chase down the sport on a day-to-day basis, a year-to-year. We're talking about the people who are only going to watch the sport in an Olympic cycle, right? So we're going to have an Olympics in LA coming up in a few years. And you're going to get a lot of eyes on it, and a lot of people will go and watch if they can, if they're not priced out, but they'll certainly watch it on television or on a streaming platform in some capacity, and you're going to see things and they're going to gravitate towards it. It's going to be a bigger push. But I will tell you that in the LA Olympics, the swimming is going to get a lot more eyeballs on it in person than ever before, because they're going to put swimming in SoFi, which is a product of what happened in Indianapolis when USA Swimming decided to put the pool inside of Lucas Oil Stadium. And I was there before they put the pool in. Now, I wasn't there around the time they were doing the construction of it, but I went to Lucas Oil earlier that year and I was doing something there. You don't need to know all of that details, but we were talking to one of the main facility guys at Lucas Oil in terms of preparing the place. One of the facilities directors, I can't remember his name right now, and it doesn't matter. But the interesting thing, what they did in India, and people still don't understand this, how of a big deal it is to decide to put a big swimming pool inside of a football stadium, is that on top of it, just putting in a football stadium, is the fact that Lucas Oil does not have drainage. It's a closed roof thing. It's not a structured thing where you can, if it bursts, we can run pipes out. And clearly they did it at the back of a period where they were going to change the turf anyway, but they had other big things coming through. And if that was a disaster, it would have shut down the facility for a bit. They saw that model. Tons of people went to these USA Swimming Championships because it was in a football stadium, and we know how it works in sports. You think about the Final Four in basketball. Women's Final Four is now gonna be inside of a stadium. It's coming to India again too soon. So you're putting things in places where you can get a lot more people inside of it. Usually in the States, it's gonna be some football stadium, right? So track and field has to do work. This is the point I'm making, because one of the things about track and field is because it's the biggest spectacle of the Olympics or the Summer Olympics too, but it's also the most accessible outside of, say, like football or rugby or something that's out there too, but on a consistent, because it's over that long period, it's accessible to people to go and watch face to face as well. It's going to run up against swimming in LA because a lot of people are going to watch swimming for real in SoFi, right? So back to the point. they have to do some work. So I'm saying it's wide open to do things, right? And it's okay to innovate in Asia, in the United States, in different places. Everybody wants to crack the US market in sport. It's no surprise. It's the biggest market for sport in terms of the revenue you can get back from the TV and the streaming and selling your product. But you're up against some massive things in the United States. The NFL is there. College sports as a spectacle is there. It's massive, right? The Big Ten TV contract is outrageous, right? The people are making money, right? Then you have the bigger professional sports. So it's hard to break into that market, but you have to do it creatively. And you can, because people have appetite for sport in everywhere. You go into different medium-sized markets, you can see different things, minor league, all sort of sports are there, and people will go and have a good time. So I think track and field can do that. They could take the show on the road and figure it out. But they have to understand these markets and understand how to market the sport to people. And I have put my hand up in the sense that I don't really care what the spectacle looks like, because the spectacle may not necessarily be something that I like. But I'm an old guy now, and I'm a fan of the sport to the point of I'll just watch it. If there's dancing and drinks passing around in the crowd, I don't really care if that means that it will be a big event and people will appreciate, as long as there's still an appreciation for the athletic performance. And I can suss that out for myself, and most people who are savvy about the sport can do that. In that case, I'm fine. So what Athlos is doing is important, right? And I think it's gonna work. Hopefully they have more money. And so you mentioned the question: you know, uh, should the Diamond League and World Athletics make the sport more accessible to viewers? Now, that's a very good question. I don't know how to answer that question. I'm trying to find that out. Because in a way, they'll say it's accessible, right? You look at the Diamond League in general, it's packed most of the places. The Europeans have an appetite for their track and field. I- I'm trying to go to Oslo because I'll be in that part of the world, and I think it might they're already close to selling out for this year from last year. So London is always sold out. There's appetite different places, so it's accessible. But they also have to think about there's some media markets where they can get it a little bit easier than say the United States. Perhaps, and I think the question you might be hinting at is like making the packaging available just on free to air, right? Perhaps you have to take a leap on that. When you buy these packages, you sometimes don't want to do it because you want to get a bang for your buck. But for a long time, Diamond League was basically a, in the United States. The package rights went to NBC until FlowTrack took it over last year, except for the Nike Prefontaine. And I guess Flow does a better job of putting it out. There's sometimes they'll give away it for free on the YouTube or so. And I think because they're more dedicated to track and field, so they do a little bit better on that kind of a thing. But I think what you're saying is that World Athletics should not put things behind paywall. But you have to remember too, they have these traditional TV contracts and other kind of media contracts that are there for a long period of time. I think they do eventually put stuff up, but I don't know. I mean, they maybe need different people to market it in some interesting ways. But accessibility to watching it is important. You got to turn people into fans that will eventually start to pay for the sport, though, right? You can't just have it for free, right? That is the business side of the sport will tell you that, right? When they court people, they are doing these packages to sell stuff, but you could probably sell it on the eyes, right? So if you have a lot of people watching, if you have a lot of things going on where people are into it, then you can then sell it on the advertisement side, because everybody wants to align themselves, their packaging with uh when people are watching stuff, right? So I don't know what to say about that. World Athletics have a YouTube, they have all these different social media, they eventually put stuff out. Same for the Diamond League, and I think they're pretty happy most of the time with attendance in the stadia, and and there's big meets in the States, and the Prefontaine is always a packed meet too. So I don't think it's an issue there. I think what you got to do is to, if it's the other leagues, it's a continental tours, and there's so many things. Maybe you kind of restructure some of those too, and the innovation that you try to put in, right? So we saw Grand Slam last year, didn't work last season. If you want to think about this way, it's technically this year, but they're in deep financial issues. Whether they come back is very on. We'll wait to see. But they got some injection of cash, which was to bail out the debt, and they still haven't. So there's a lot of challenging times there. Athlos is running on a deficit as well, but I think their model is better in terms of the cash, and they have more money to burn, I imagine. But ultimately, all of these things have to create profit. You cannot operate sports without it making money. It's not philanthropy. Sport is business. And hard choices have to be made. And that's why even World Athletics at their level, coming with the Ultimate Championships next year, it's not every event, and they're changing things because they're trying to create packages, and they work with television to see what works best for television, right? A lot of things that we think about in terms of changing the sport is based on a lot of TV recommendation to, and does it fit, right? This false starting stuff used to be a problem, and it holds up the whole TV product, so they create different things around it, right? I mean, it's a kind of a back and forth type of situation, right? Sonia, what's going on? How are you doing? Yeah. So I don't know what to tell you, but I think I just hope that it expands, right? I wish it success. I say to this day, because a lot of people gave me a lot of stick early on the Grand Slam stuff when I kind of criticize it for a number of things, but it was a more constructive criticism. I don't come out here running stuff, and I some of those people who have criticized me, I haven't seen them back on the channel yet or in the comment sections, because I do respond to many comments, as many of you know. I try my best, and I haven't seen some of them yet. And but it's constructive, right? Because you want to see it grow. So I would love for someone to bail them out and for them to launch a product that is much more manageable, perhaps something more streamlined, a shorter product. And I keep saying, and I'm never gonna get off this, and I don't think you can change my mind. It's the same way you can't change my mind on the enhanced game. I'll never watch it. I don't want to hear about it, because I think sport is bigger than just competition and what you do. It's about integrity. It's the same with track and field and no field events. I don't think any respectable meet can walk around and tell me there's no field events, unless you're telling me this is a relay carnival and we're only running relays. And the biggest relay carnival and the longest running relay carnival we know, the Penn Relays, they have field events. And they have individual stuff going on at the same time too, right? In running, it's almost as democratic as you can get. Age group from never use a block in their life to 80, 90-year-olds running. So don't make any track and field event and tell me you can't put field events in it, because it's nonsense. So you have to fix that, because the field events is a lot of things, it's things that just really, really push the sport, and some of the most impressive things are there, and it's a package. So this works well for TV. This is why I say, so that even when I was being critical of Athlos a little bit, and I'm not trying to be critical, they figured out that they didn't have enough events there, because I guess they're just spending at a certain price point and they're managing the meet. So they created a party inside. So half those people inside the stands are just having a party. They don't really know what's going on. They're probably, passing a nice tequila here and there or whatever they had at the bar. But I'm watching it and I'm like, okay, I'm waiting. There's nothing here, right? So from a TV standpoint, they have to improve the product. And the only way you can improve the product is to have more events. So you transition from one thing to the next to the next. And it works. And that's why the field events work in a nutshell. It's beyond that too. And it's been and Dean the Dream is saying you gotta respect the field. So it's even beyond even if you don't want to respect the field and you should respect the field, it it makes the package tight and it makes it work for uh for everybody. Appreciate it. Sonia says, I will never watch enhanced games either. I'm just not interested. No, I 100% agree on you. And I don't care. I've seen Fred Kerley. I don't want to get into Fred Kerley anymore. Maybe I brought his name up, so I'll probably get into him because he's been having, one of these kind of interesting years in terms of it's just not on the path that you hope he would be on to capitalize on all that talent. And now he's talking about this and he's talking about the monetary part, and money is important. I'm not saying you people have to eat and feed their families and create some kind of legacy and all of that type of stuff, but honestly, when you think about sport, we have to think about what it means. It's entertainment, it's everything you can think about, but it's also an inspirational thing, right? Many of the sports that we come and love today and we spend big bucks to do started out in an amateur kind of way, right? People just doing it not only for recreational purposes, largely so, but also for camaraderie and all these different things that it teaches people, right? So you don't come and tell me that we're just gonna spend time on a sport that is gonna be people taking whatever they can. I'm not into that. I think it's important. It's the same like when we think about performance enhancing and there's this new kind of review on whether like you can use marijuana in sport and when you can use it and when you can't use it. It's not necessarily a performance enhancer, or say you take like some other kind of drug too. Those things don't necessarily enhance you, but we don't want it because it come up against the integrity of the sport. It's not the kind of thing you want to set. And the way sport works now, athletes are really put up on a pedestal. A lot of people watch. There's a lot of influence there as well. So I think about that. I'm not saying that your kid should take their cues from sporting stars alone, but you can't help but that there will be influence. So they should be doing it in the right way. So I don't care for that like you, Sonia. I'm not watching that. So many good things to watch. I'd rather watch people play marbles than than watch that. But I think it's a joke. And anybody who thinks they can go over there and do that, well, whatever, do it. But don't expect me to come back and think about you as a clean athlete, right? And yeah, I think you compromise your integrity when you do that as well. So that's my take on it. I won't belabor the point, but I'm not watching it. Yeah, certainly not watching it. Dean says, "What happens if the announced games goes bust like Grand Slam? First career will be over." Well, not quite sure where Fred Kerley is on his career as well. It's interesting. It's kind of an interesting athlete to be honest with you. I don't we've talked about it on the channel a number of times. The spikes issue of some years ago, the bust up, just never quite lived up to what you would think would have been a cycle of medals, right? Maybe not necessarily domination, but it's a talented athlete. I mean, a guy could run a fantastic 400. He would still be world class if he was doing it. He ran the 100. Everybody wants to get there. From 1 to 4 is exceptional. Is one of the very best, right? And he picks up medals in Tokyo Olympics, and he gets the goal. And you think it's going to go this direction. And, there's a little bit of injury here and there too, but there's a lot of off the track distractions and interference and just things you don't need that really, I think, put his career in jeopardy. And so he's not particularly young. How old is he now? Is he 31, 32? Let me check. I have to see how old is he. He's 30, actually. So at 30, you could say he could be he could be around for another couple of years well and still be competitive. Is that talented? Could he make it to LA? I think he could if he really trained the right way. I'm not 100% sure he would, but once you get older, you have to do different things. Just pick up and call Shelly-Ann and Fraser-Pryce and ask how you stay along in the game. A lot of people can learn lessons from people who change their everything about them, and athletes change programs with coaches over time just to stay along in the sport. So for Fred, I think he could be around and be competitive enough, and even get to an Olympics, even if he's not on the team as an individual person. So I think he's giving up a lot there by flirting with this kind of enhanced stuff. But maybe he's over track and field as well. So we'll see. Astro 2024 is asking, good to have you on. Who was a better 200 runner, Elaine or Shericka? Shericka has 21.4, but Elaine had 2 Olympic goals. Career-wise, it's gonna be for me. So let me work these things again. Let me put out my usual markers for how I measure success and what I rank higher than others. So there's many things that make an athlete elite. You can do these first. You could be the first to do things, and it inspires other people. The world record matters a lot in many cases. It's not the sole thing, but you get one of those, it's interesting. If you come up close to what the really great standard of the era is to, I can measure that in some interesting ways. So people close to world records, even if they don't run it, if they get close, if they're running in some elite times, you do that. But then the medals are the big deal in the sport. The Olympic one counts more than the world championship one for me. But they're kind of pretty similar, but the Olympics is just like on top of everything in all the sport. Probably the World Cup is the only thing that can be at that same level, but I think the Olympics is bigger because it's more sports, right? And it's been around much longer, right? The modern Olympics, 1896, right? So I want to make that clear, right? Pound for pound on the medal haul here is when you stack up the 2 gold medals over the 200, because we'll take the gold medal for Jackson in Oregon and in Budapest, and we'll take the 2 gold medals for Elaine Thompson from Rio and Tokyo. Those are high quality. Those medals weigh a lot more. So if you're doing it that way, it weighs that more. Elaine has a 21.5. When she dropped that, she's the fastest woman alive at that time. Just putting you in levels that we hadn't seen. We've seen a lot of 21.6. Not a lot. Let me take that back. We've seen other women do the 21.6, including Elaine, obviously. Daphne, Merle Nati has one. You could name a few athletes who would have still been alive. And then you even have these people who crack some 200-meter levels that don't go down to those times. You think about the all times on like a VCB with a 2, because you think about the VCB thing too, 2 back-to-back. First, second woman to do that. Elaine becomes a 3rd over the 200 there at the Olympics. Allison. Those are some incredible records when you put them together. And I think Sonia's talking about success is durability too. For sure, that's the longevity. I think is also the ability to see out different generations of athletes is always up there for me as well. And then so back now, the 21 force, outrageous. I would say in living memory right now, I think those 2 seasons for Shericka where she was chasing the world record, if you package the seasons together over the 200 meters, it's the best thing you've seen in a package in terms of the elite level of the performances. She's getting close to the world records. And with better and she ran a lot of them in conditions that weren't necessarily favorable. So she could potentially, if she had gotten a 1.9, a 1.8 in one of them, who knows? She could have broken the record or at least come very close. She could have gone into the 21 threes, high 21 threes there. So you got to put that in context too, right? I don't know if we can say who's a better, and when you say who's a better runner, if you're going off of just times, then it's going to be Jackson, right? So it's questions, what are we asking, right? That's the kind of interesting thing, right? We missed out on what Jackson could have done in Tokyo. I don't know. I don't know if she could have beaten Elaine. I don't think anybody was beating Elaine in Tokyo in 21. But the way she didn't make it into that final, I think 2 Jamaican women would have been on that podium that night. And given what we saw from Jackson there, picking up that bronze medal in that 100 meter at that time in the Jamaica clean sweep, who knows? Maybe she would have popped a 21.6 then. Or you could have pushed Elaine even further. So we only can reflect on that. We just have no idea. So it's hard to really say, right? To be honest with you. I mean, and then Elaine does this too, and we must, if we were to put a little bit more polish on it, she does it in a cycle, in a double cycle, right? So she does the 1-2 at the Olympics back to back, and no one has done that. So, except on the men's side with Bolt, right? So it's a little bit better too, if you want to kind of stick around that stuff. But they're all great, right? I suspect, though, and I guess this is the same for Noah Lyles, Shericka Jackson, Noah Lyles are 2 of the all-time greats in the 200 meters in terms of the times, certainly in the medals for Jackson now, picking up another world championship one there. And obviously Noah is done something that only Bolt has done in the world championship, is that they will be disappointed if they walk away without the Olympic gold. And it's possible that they will walk away without Olympic golds. Because the cycles change. I don't know where Jackson can get back, what levels she can get back, but she's not getting younger. She's been in the sport for a while too. So it's possible that she may walk away. And I'm not 100% sure that Lyles can go to the next Olympics and win it, right? The 200 meters. And this year was brilliant. And I have to hold my hand up. He delivered, run back-to-back 19.5s, semifinal, final. It's really big running there too. But if he continues to double, the competition is getting better. I don't think he'll win the 100 again. And the 200 is getting even better with guys that are younger too. You think about, let's see, Litoboga or Brian Lever coming through, and other people might come through the cycle. So that's the only thing I would say on their careers. But that's it. Everybody wants that Olympic goal. That's the thing that they look up to. But it's challenging. So that's the only thing I would say. But we're talking about 2 of the very best there, to be honest with you. There's some more coming through. So yeah, you're right, Sonia. Success is about durability. The Olympics is a big deal, but we can't ignore it. No, you can't ignore the 21-41. I think season it's there, right? In terms of what she did over. I've never seen anything that good in a compact season the consistency of her running too, and the times that she managed to put. So and she's, it was kind of within. We are on world record watch for a 2-year cycle, and that's saying a lot given where that record is. Another comment here. Damar is saying Elaine is greater over 200 for me. Shericka better because she has gone faster, but looking at accomplishments, Elaine clearly greater, winning at the pinnacle of the sport twice and a world silver. Yeah. And that silver medal behind Schiffers was really interesting too. That kind of announced her. The thing that about Elaine, and I don't want to get into it, is that we robbed of what could have unquestionably be the greatest 1-2 runner we've ever seen, right? In terms of domination. We've robbed because of injury on one level. So especially in the interim years between the Olympics. And then certainly we got robbed when there was changed out after Tokyo, when everything shifted from the coaching cycle. It became problematic in different ways to sustain high performances. And obviously injuries also crept back in as well. But that's one of those things about sports. You just never get it all the time, but it's one of those great type of eras that we never yeah. Well, I hope she gets to come back on the track and finish the way she wants. Maybe not saying that she's going to medal, but get to go out the way she wants to get out. My opinion, this is not a comment here from Demar. My opinion, Shelly, the greatest 100-meter sprinter. Yeah, I agree. I've said that every day. I used to say a line that it doesn't matter where you wake up, she has to be number one. And Elaine is the greatest overall sprinter, 1 and 2. Though VCB is massively slept on for greatest overall sprinter, she might be the one. Yeah, Veronica Campbell-Brown, one of the great athletes to successfully transition from a dominant junior athlete to a dominant senior athlete. It's just VCB is just remarkable. Remember that night in Chile? Was it Chile? Yeah. Championship records too when she won World Junior titles. That leg in Sydney, they put the kid on the leg in the relay. Thing about VCB is it's the fearlessness, the fighter. Never a perfect sprinter either, right? You always thought that there's some mechanical issues to, especially in the 100 meters. But then sometimes when you used to count VCB out, she comes on the podium, and there's those years where she fought with Allison and couldn't get it right at the World Championships all the time, and they were trading Olympic titles. Unquestionably one of the very best. They probably should put her on a bill or something on the money. Yeah, top class athlete. And Demar again saying, in my opinion, Elaine should try training with Glenn Mills. She's the most similar sprinter to Bolt. It would be an interesting collaboration. I don't know the answer to that. We could speculate. I think Glenn would do a great job if he had her under his tutelage. There's no question about it. But that's what all elite coaches would do potentially. But it has to be the right fit, right? We can't just like plug and play. There's a lot more coming to it. Personality, what you're expecting, the circus that can come around it in terms of media, different things. I'm not saying in this case, but I'm talking generally. I always said that when she made the shift from Stephen is I could have seen a Bobby, right? I could have seen a John Smith. I could see certain things. I just felt like he just needed a different type of thing. And then it looked like it was going to work on the Osborne, and then that also didn't work out. So we'll see. I don't know what will happen. I wish her the very best. Dean the Dream is saying, do you think Glenn Mills would be a better coach for Kishane? I don't know. Honestly, I don't think there's a problem with Kishane on the Stephen Francis. If we can tell me what the big issue is, then we can unpack this. The guy was basically unhealthy at different points. He goes to his first major games last year and he gets a silver medal. Let's before we start analyzing the issues. And he comes back again at another major championship, back to back years, and he gets a silver medal. There's 2 medals at a major championship. 1-2 years. If that is causing someone to leave or to shift, then then it cannot be about performance. Then it has to be about relationship, because it's not performance. Now, should he have won the Olympic title last year? In retrospect, yeah, but there's a lot more in it than just running fast or the ability to run fast. Should he have won this year again? Yeah, because the question is, did you learn from what happened the year before? And the answer to that was coming in that they did, but it didn't happen. I don't think there's a need to leave. I don't think it's a coaching issue. I don't think it's an any type of issue. I think they have what it takes. I think they know he can run fast. I think ultimately, and he has to answer this, not to us as a public or to anybody, but to himself. And it's a recognition that when you look at the race and how he executes, he's having issues in the deceleration phase. There's no question about it. You can take the numbers, you can see it visually. The funny thing is, you can visually see it, which is not always an easy way to analyze anything. But the data is there a lot on some of those races. He decelerates really quickly at the end. So it could be a training issue in some ways. It depends on what happens. But I think it's a relaxation issue. The guy is super quick. He can pop up and do something. Maybe you think about how do you do these repeated type of things. But give him time, right? We think about Oblique winning after we thought he should have been on the podium in Oregon, in Budapest, in Paris. And Paris, yeah, he got injured, but final gets it done. So I think we'll. I don't think I wouldn't, unless there's a bust up with personalities and problems. He's in the right space. Figure it out, and he should win. Make that something else. Whatever they need to fix that part. There's technical fixes, and there's also workload fixes that can aid that part as well. The challenge is, so you can try to get real fast, right? You can try to be a 696 guy every day. I don't know. That might be out there. That might be pushing limits. That might not be the good idea. And if you're much quicker than everybody else, there's nothing they can do. Some people approach it that way, but you can approach it in that way and also approach it what if they're on my shoulder? Right? You got to win in different ways. So think about it. I think that's what I'll say. I know I went way long on that. Damar says VCB and some seasons she had the start, others seasons the finish, but never both at the same time. And people forget her 100-meter chops, first Jamaican to win a gold into that. Yeah, probably should have won in as well too in Athens, but that's a different story. I always wondered if she had stuck around longer with Lance. There is also a flirtation with Omar coaching at different points too, which is interesting. I don't want to get into that, but yeah, the career is outrageous. There's a lot of she should be able to dine on that for the rest of her life, right? Back to back. And yeah, it's just, she has a 21.7 in those legs. I think she could have run faster too. Also, a different era coming, because she kind of comes into prominence 20 something years ago, right? It's gonna, there's a changing too in certain things. Brian says VCB, even a better person. Yeah, I mean, like fantastic, humble woman, and does a lot of kind of off the track work too and such. Sonia says Kishane just needs to get something fixed. He's fine at MVP. I agree on that. I think it's just things, and I think we also, why people look at Kishane and we have a lot to say is because you figured he can do it, right? You figure you look at he has the chops to win, right? The guy that you want to do a lot of work with is like Akeem Blake too, right? Because you think he can improve a lot more, but no one is putting that same level of pressure on him as in Thompson. But it comes with the territory when you expect a win. Well, I think they let's see, let's tell. He probably just rewatches that. They sit down and figure it out, and he'll get better. Demars, I do find it odd how Frano last year and Kishane this year blamed the losses based on the start. I do think they're over relying on the start. Just look at how Shelly blossomed after leaving. Yeah, I get that, right? I mean, and you got to give what's his name, journalist? What's his name again? His name's slipping me right now. Lots of credit for what they've managed to do afterwards. I'm not saying no to like they don't need to. Something has to be changed or fixed or tweaked, but I think it can be done in the same place. I think I was responding to the earlier question about whether if he went to Glenn or went to somebody else, if it would improve. I don't think there's a need to leave here. That's what I'm saying, right? The grass sometimes is not always greener, and you have to remember, even when people move, it doesn't mean that there's going to be a seamless change. And see, you ask if you had to take 8 guys and 8 women for a relay pool camp for 2026, who do you pick? This is an interesting question. I haven't. I would make sure I put I would take an odd mix too, right? So if it's a women, you gotta, obviously you go with Jackson, you go with Smith, you go with the team that was there, I would say, as a starter with some of those athletes. Obviously Shelly is gone. I would put Brianna Listons in the mix. I would put, Alana Reed too. I would put Williams. I put a bunch of them just to intermix of experience right there. Maybe throwing, one of those high schoolers too, just for them to see what it looks like, not necessarily to say they have arrived, right? That's one way of thinking about it. On the men's side too, probably the same type of crop. You had, you have to put Brian Level as also Sonia saying for sure. Golson, if he's fit, yeah, that's interesting, right? Maybe you got to throw in some mix of other athletes too, but I don't know. They need a camp, but they need a camp for multiple different reasons. Not even just only performance, but also for camaraderie and rhythm. Yeah. So yeah, I would take Oblique, obviously Kishane, Brian, Akeem would be there, Ryan Ford for sure, Watson, yeah, and Golson and Krumi, yeah. I hope he gets onto the mix too as well. I think you want to have them in the mix, and then I would, yeah, yeah, you'd have to do that, yeah. And Level obviously has to be there. Oh yeah, you already have him, Brian. There, yeah. So I want to see some more growth in the 200 as well, and the 400 meters. That's what needs a revolution. It's a rich legacy that hasn't been structured, and the 400-meter right now is different level, different class in the sport of track and field. I didn't get to talk about this a couple of weeks ago, and I think I was going to talk to when Leighton and I was on. I was going to talk to him about it, but I didn't. But Botswana's having a revolution there in terms of it's a renaissance. It can't even be a renaissance. It's like, yeah, probably it is. I don't know. But you think about what they've done, and I was particularly intrigued by Cabinet Chappie, Colin Cabinet Chappie, when he said that he was thinking about trying to go after the world record from Wade. And I was like, what? Because he's like, he said what is he, like a 43.5 guy, and he wants to break the world record, which is 43.03. I was like, where's he going to get 50, 0.5 from, and I think, when I read the article again, it was more like world records are to be broken, and he's thinking about it in that way. But I was trying to do some back of the hand calculation the other night. I just don't know. I mean, like, he'd have to improve the first 200, and that third 100 too needs to be improved. I think his third 100 I have to check the numbers. I don't know what he did in Tokyo. It may have been faster than Wade's third 100 in Rio, but I don't know. And then you have to have that endurance to come back home. But I kind of digressed on that. But what I'm saying, the 400 meters is a high level space. I like what I saw a little bit from Big Boy this year. Hopefully can continue, but also, you never know, right? Maybe Watson can come back healthy, but that's a space that Jamaica should be dominating, in terms of not necessarily dominating as medalists, but they should be getting into finals and getting more people running sub 44. I think in any given year, my marker, if you were to turn around a 400 meter in the country there, I would say you should have two guys running sub 44 consistently all the time. It's possible. And you should have at least 10 guys mid to low 44 5. And that's not asking for much now, especially when you think about where the sport is. All right, I get a couple more, then I got to get out of here. What do you think Oblique is capable of in the 200? It's a good question. I don't know. He ran the straight some years ago. What, last year? Was it last year or the year before? I can't recall. He could go, and he went sub 20, right? I think he can. I think he could probably pop up around a 1995, 1990. And if they work him the right way, I think he could probably start to live in the 19.8s, 19.7 regions if they do it the right way. If he takes it really seriously, as if he wants to double, which I don't know if he can, there's a lot of chatter. There's things that he had issues training, and Sonny is also alluding to it. Glenman said Oblique will be attempting 200 now that he had done the surgery. Yeah, so he's done the surgery, but also if you realize what, I guess, the levels that Glenman was working with, Oblique couldn't train as hard as they wanted him to. They had to tweak a program, find a way to get him to do that level of work. And so you hope if he's healthy and if he can push, he might do something dangerous, right? I would say if next year it would be cool if he could run 19.7s or 19.8s rather as a try, not 19.7s. If he were to run 19.8 next year, then I think maybe you're thinking about the next World Championship that he could potentially double. Yeah. World Athletics should introduce a Moment of the Year award, because some Athletes of the Year nominees are only there because of one performance, not a whole year. It's interesting. They expanded these awards. I never put much stock into them because it's very hard to differentiate. And I'm glad at some point they kind of put the field event stuff in different categories, and there's different categories of the award. I haven't fully digested the nominees there. Yeah, I think some more about it. I looked at the people who got nominated, and by and large, it's okay, but you'll never get everybody to agree on some of these things. There are some people who should get some awards for just standout performance. I think Ryan Krauser should get an award this year for being injured the whole time, popping up at a world championship without any competition and winning it. Like, what? And the shot put is stack, right? So I think that is an achievement award. Even Yulimar coming back, we hadn't seen her getting on the podium. Yeah, so I do think there could be some of those type of awards, but then we start giving our awards for everything. It's also other people might complain about it. So I don't know. Guys, this was a Vibes Live. As I said, I talked about all sort of different stuff. I don't know what my producer would like about that. He might be saying I was on cricket, I was on football, and then back to track. Yeah, I'm probably gonna get out. Well, let me get this one, and before I get out, like Masai 1217 and Oblique could get nominated for Moment of the Year. Also, Sydney 47. She didn't dominate the year, but shot with the world. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I mean, but you win the world championship is a big deal, right? So if Masai had run, maybe she would have gotten it. You know, the 1217 is big. Then she runs another. She has another what? She had a 1219 too, or 1220 or something like that. Yeah, you have to like those things. Last year was a great year for Masai. Who knows? All right. So yeah, I will probably won't be back for a live for unless I do a pop-up live. I might do an extra special pop-up live next week if I can figure it out. But we'll be putting some other stuff on the channel and chopping up some things that we've had before. We launched membership, so check it out if you want. And if you do it on the desktop. I think Apple charges more for membership on the mobile, but looking forward to giving some some exclusive content and so on. It's been fun. I know a lot of people are hanging out and see some of you coming through and putting in your comments. And thanks for liking the video. That helps a lot. And we'll be back soon. And in the meantime, enjoy some of the content that's on the channel. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.